I grew up in Trinidad and Tobago. And by the time I was 19 years old, I felt like my life was coming together. I had a dream job in the finance industry. I had a great community. And I was engaged to the love of my life. But then everything changed. My parents had moved to America, and what that meant was that I had to go join them. I remember arriving in New York City, and it was so noisy, and everyone seemed to be in such a hurry. I felt like I was dropped in the middle of the ocean without a life jacket. Things were out of control. And then it took the next 2 decades of me struggling to make a life for myself in New York City. And it's during that time I felt like I've had my fair share of adversity. Now, have you experienced adversity? Okay. By show of hands, have you ever suffered loss in any way? Yeah. What about rejection? Have you experienced rejection? Okay. How about conflict? Oh, yeah. So we all have experienced adversity. Now, according to the American Psychological Association, resilience is the process of adapting well in the face of adversity. So we all can benefit from being more resilient. You see, when I think about it, I can just only reflect on the days where I had difficulties, and now that I look back at those difficult moments, I can see how all of those experiences has led to the development of my resilience. And so that's what I want to share with you today. 3 key principles that I've learned that I believe would help you to develop resilience so that you can adapt well in the face of adversity. So within my first month of arriving in America, I remember standing on this cold New York street and looking up at this big blue and white Victorian home. And now that was the home that I would live in and work in 6 days a week as a live-in nanny. I had no idea what to expect. And frankly, I was terrified. So I stood there and I rang the doorbell and I waited. And the woman who answered the door, she said, "Hi, I am Mrs. Eskandarian. It's lovely to meet you." Well, she seemed friendly, so this must work out really well. So, within the first few weeks it did. It really worked out quite well. But one morning, I had this very bad headache. And as the day progressed, the headache got worse and worse. I felt like I needed to lay down. So while I was laying there in the dark, Mrs. Eskandarian came in the bedroom. And she said, "I'm paying you to do a job, and Tony will be home soon, and you can't make dinner. If you're too sick to do dinner, then you get the bleep out of my bleeping house, you bleep." And she stormed out and slammed the door behind her. I lay there numb. What just happened? See, I was totally stunned because no one had ever spoken to me like that in my entire life. So I crept out and I called my fiancé, Grantley, to come and get me. And when the taxi arrived, he took one look at me, and the next stop was the hospital. When the doctor saw me, he said, "Thank goodness you got here when you did. You have a fever of 104 with asthmatic bronchitis. This is very serious. You're going to have to rest for a very long time." Well, I took the next 3 months to recover from pneumonia. And during that time, I had a lot of time to think. So I'm thinking, well, I got fired from my job within 2 months. And this is really hard. And it must have been my fault. I should have tried to stick this thing through a little bit more. So I felt more guilty and more guilty, and every day I felt more and more depressed. But as I began to heal, there was a shift in my thinking. You see, I was working for that woman for 6 days a week, doing my very best for just $3 an hour. And I remember the doctor saying he got here just in time. Yeah? So this is not just me making this up. This is me taking care of myself. So at the end, I felt proud. I felt proud that I had the courage to stand up for my health. I only wish I had done it sooner. And so this experience has taught me something very important. It has taught me to value myself. You see, if you want to develop resilience, you've got to take care of yourself. You can't run yourself down in the ground and be resilient. So to develop resilience, the first key thing I learned was that it's easier to develop resilience when you're healthy than when you're running on empty. So when I felt better, I was off to my next nanny job. It was this time with a middle-aged couple with their toddler son, Max, and Max really seemed to like me. On the first day, we were having fun while I was cleaning. And so Mrs. Snyder, she went out to the supermarket and left me at home with Max. Well, Max, after about an hour, wanted to go see his dad. So he wandered off, pushed the bedroom door, and found his dad. A couple minutes later, Mr. Snyder comes out of the bedroom and says, "Hey, you, come and get Max out of our bedroom." Now, he was standing there in these grubby white underpants, which were clearly way too small, with his tall gray socks and his hands on his hips, like this was the most normal thing in the world. Well, I took one look at him, and I thought to myself, there is no way I'm going into that bedroom with that man in those underpants. So I said, I can't at the moment. Well, when Mrs. Snyder got home, she rushed to the kitchen where I was, and she said, "This is not going to work out. I called you a taxi, and he'll be here shortly." Okay, I said, "I'll go get my bags then." She said, "No need. I put your things by the sidewalk. Goodbye." And that was that. I was sacked for my second live-in nanny job without making it through the first day. But on the train ride back to Brooklyn, my self-talk was a lot healthier this time. I thought to myself, I went over the events in my head. I said, well, I was fired because I won't go into the bedroom with her husband in his underpants? Well, I wasn't brought up that way. You see, my parents had instilled very good core values in us, and those values were important to me. So if that was a problem for them, then that's not the job for me. But let's get it clear. I was disappointed because I really needed that job. But here's the thing. When you have committed, clear values, you've already decided. So the decision was much easier than I thought. You see, when you have clear, committed core values, you will know what you'll stand for and what you will not stand for. You will stand for what you believe in when you know what you believe in. So the second key principle I learned is that if you want to develop resilience, you must have clear, committed values. So a couple weeks later, I was off to my next house, this time with Martha. Martha was a single working-class mom with a delightful 3-year-old son called Andy. Oh, I loved Andy. But Martha was going through a divorce. She had her challenges, but we got along really well. Couple months later, Grantley and I got married. And because I was living and working in her house for 6 days a week, I thought I'd ask Martha, can he come over? That's reasonable, right? Well, so I said, Martha, is it okay if Grantley can come over? Not to sleep over, just to spend a few hours, 1 day a week with me. Martha looked at me and she said, I don't think it's a good idea, Jolander. You see, Grantley can come to my home anytime, but I don't think it's a good idea because it's not safe for a black man to be walking around in this neighborhood. I felt like I was punched in the gut because this was a powerful reminder to me that I was not at home in Trinidad anymore. So the more I thought about it, I felt like this was not the community for me. You see, my relationship with Martha remained very good, and oh, that Andy. I loved Andy. But I had to make a decision. You see, when you're in a situation that's not good and you say nothing or you do nothing about it, you play a role in maintaining the status quo and you become helpless. But when you take action, even when it's uncomfortable, you make a stand for change, and that increases your confidence and your resilience develops. So the third key principle I learned, when you want to develop resilience, you've got to take action. So I learned a lot about myself and life in New York City during those years. I learned that you can become more resilient when you're healthy. You can become more resilient when you have clear, committed core values. And you can become more resilient when you take action. But in the most recent chapter of my life, I discovered something wonderful about resilience that I didn't realize before. You see, several years after I left Martha, I landed a great job on Wall Street. I enjoyed it, but it was hard. You see, I had to overcome racial and gender barriers, and also I had to work much longer hours than other people did, plus I had to go back to school. Life became very hectic because Grantley and I had then had 2 sons. But somehow, I managed to find time for my childhood passion of playing the piano and teaching others to play. Now, life was hectic, very chaotic, but somehow I managed to turn those 3 students I was teaching in my basement into a thriving business. And today, that business grew so much, it's now a performing arts academy where we serve thousands of students in New York City. Yeah. And recently, we celebrated our 25th anniversary with performances at Carnegie Hall. Yeah. But for every one of those 25 years, every single week, we had big problems to be solved. We had money problems, permit problems, and my goodness, parent problems. I felt like quitting many times. Many times. But I loved it. It was hard, but I loved it. And I couldn't imagine not being a part of this academy that I had built. So the challenges that we face in life has taught me something very significant. It has taught me that you can develop the determination, the grit, and the courage to keep pressing forward. You see, the thing I learned about resilience in this chapter of my life is that when you're passionate about something and you love what you're doing, you stay in the game. And so, as Joseph Campbell says, follow your bliss. So now, after half a century, I do believe that the difficult moments that you have in life helps you to grow. And now, when you see people who are truly resilient, just know this. They don't just take it easy in their comfort zone and then become resilient. When you see people who are truly resilient, they don't just go through life, they grow through life. So as John Maxwell says, sometimes you win and sometimes you learn. See, we celebrate the wins, but it's during those dark and difficult moments that we grow. So quite honestly, we need both to become more and more resilient. Thank you.